They're playing in front of the house, what can I do?
We'll just wait for a few more people. Guys, we'll wait just for some more people before I start, because whatever I say from the beginning will be really important. Those who joined in new, we'll just wait for a few more people. Let me just give them about 5 to 10 minutes of grace time. I hope y'all can hear me. If you can't, please reply. Please leave a comment. It's not 5:30 yet. Thank you for those who joined in quickly. Let's just give 5 more minutes. Thank you for letting me know that you all can hear and see well. Those joining in new, we're just waiting for a few more people. There was a live session in the morning, but a lot of them said that they weren't notified. So this time it has been notified, messages have been sent, posts were up. We'll do questions till people come. We'll give them 5 more minutes. I'm taking questions. Anything you want to ask me, art related, you can ask. Difference between watercolors and gouache. I will be talking about this later. Watercolors, yeah, of course. Gouache is also water soluble. You need water to mix them. See gouache like a slightly more bigger and fully grown muscled cousin of watercolors. It can be used. It's very opaque. It's more opaque than watercolors, but less thicker than acrylic, more thicker than watercolors. It's between acrylic and watercolors. It's not as runny. It depends on how much water you add. So it's more pigmented. Actually very highly pigmented. It's used to add you can work on watercolors with gouache. You can work watercolors with gouache. I'm sorry for the disturbance. There's some kids playing outside. Vegetable man. Sorry. I'm sorry, I live in an apartment. So yeah, that's the difference. Watercolors and Gouache. I will be explaining them. I will be trying two mediums out right in front of you here, and I'll show you the difference. Like I said, Gouache can go over watercolors, watercolors can go over Gouache, but not as much. After a point, you can't add more than 3 to 4 layers of Gouache. The paint will crack. And watercolors, yeah, the paper will tear after a certain point. It's too much water, right? Even the most thicker, most fattest paper will tear if there's too much paint. I will explain in more detail. It's 5:35. I think we should start. It's already been 11 minutes. I think we're starting. Okay, so there was a session in the morning, and then people couldn't join. It was too busy in the morning. A lot of them asked if I can have a session in the evening where people it's more easier. The people are available in the evening. Hi guys, whoever newly joined. We will be talking about what materials are required for watercolors, watercolor paintings and gouache paintings. People keep asking me what do I use, what can beginners start with. So we will start with watercolors. Hi again to all the people who newly joined. Okay, so yeah, I will start with palettes. What can beginners use? Beginner palettes. So yeah, as I talked about, I talked about this in the morning. It's a very good beginner set. I wouldn't suggest it for children, but it's not as expensive, and maybe you can buy for kids. There are watercolors available for children, but I think kids who really like it, it's worth it, I think. So this is Camel's Artist's Watercolor Cakes. There are 18 shades, and yes, this is the first watercolor palette that I bought. It's 200 rupees. This is a very good palette for beginners. Very good palette for beginners. You cannot lay down paint thick with this. It will depend on how much you mix and how much. I'd still suggest paint out of a tube if you want to lay down thick layers, but let me just show you. So we'll just try these. If you're using a palette and before you start painting, you might want to, wet each tablet. Wet each cake, they're not tablets. I need to stop using that language. Wet each cake completely. They all need to be wet because you're activating the pigments in them. So yeah, the more water you add, the more runny it gets. So that's the thing about watercolor. So this is thick now. This is thick paint now. Now I can let this dry, or I can make it thin. How do you make this even more runny? More water, not paint. More water. This is very good for artists, for beginner artists, for people who are trying out watercolors. Very, very, very good quality and very good, very cost effective. Now you want to put something thicker on this. You might want to wait for the first layer to dry. It's really good actually. I think I'll show you. I think we'll go in with some yellow. You see that? It's actually beautiful. Watercolors, once you understand what how to use the medium, it's just so much fun. I'm gonna go in with a little brown. I'll put up a tutorial soon on my YouTube channel. People who are new to my page right now, there's a link in my bio. So it's like a let me add some greens. So it's really diluted. I want some thick paint, so I add less. You want sorry for cutting the video in between. I'm getting a question from Ginger the Goldie. What is the GSM of the paper needed? This is 300 GSM. I will be if you stick around, I will be talking about paper and materials after I talk about paint, what's required. But to answer your question, 300 GSM. So I want thicker paint. You want thick watercolors, you add less water. That's it. If you're using from a pan, that is, from a palette, sorry. You see? That's thick. If you want more precision, I'd suggest you wait for the layer you first applied to dry completely and then you add thick layers. Otherwise, you see, it will blend in too much, too fast, and then you cannot work. The thing about watercolors, you need to, it's the one medium that nobody can teach. You have to learn on your own. That's the only way you're going to understand. I can tell you what materials to use, what's best, what's not best, but until you try it, it's not going to really work. It looks good, huh? I have no idea what this is. So this is a very good beginner palette, very, very, very good beginner palette. It's cost effective. You can take it everywhere. You can, it's amazing. Again, let me repeat that. It's Camel Artists Watercolor Kicks, 18 shades. I think there is a smaller palette available. I don't know. You have to check. Yeah, so that's 200 rupees. I think when I bought it, it was 2000 rupees. Can you believe this palette is actually about 10 years old, 6 years old, I think. Quite old. So the thing about watercolors and gouache is it really, really lasts very, very, very long. You can just leave it, you can just leave it like this, and you can just come back to it whenever you want, add some water and start using. It's that amazing a medium. Okay, the next palette I have, it's slightly expensive. The Sennelier Aqua Mini. Yes, there's a bigger palette available, but this is more travel friendly, so that's why I picked it up. So you know, if I go to Kerala, or if I'm traveling around in Mysore, you know, where I need only just this much. That's it. I never buy extra paint, as in extra colors. I just need the primary shades and I can create them. I can create the color I want. Yeah, this is about 1,800, 1,900 something, or I think it's increased right now. It's about 2,000 something rupees. It is expensive. It's in the expensive range. I'd suggest you buy this only after you've understood watercolors and how to use them, and you know, once you've understood the properties of water, and if you can, and once you learn to control watercolor paints, it has a mind of its own. The next palette I'd like to share with you guys is Koi Watercolors. Yes, it's from Sakura. Sakura is one of the best brands out there. It's called Sakura of America. It's a really good brand. It's about, I'll just show you the size. It's about that big. There are all sizes of this palette available. There's 6 colors available. 3, I think there is even 3 colors. I'm not quite sure. 6 color palette. There is a 48 color palette. This is 24, I think. So yeah. As you can see, I use a lot of green. I will use a lot of greens and yellows, all the primary colors. I use them a lot. This actually comes with a palette like this. I'll just show it to you. Comes with a palette like this. So that. So what I like about this is I can just place it here and keep rotating it to however I like it. Like if I'm working from that side or this side or either ways, it's just like this. So if I'm working, it's just this much. Because watercolors, it dries so fast. Water just moves so quickly. Sometimes you feel so frustrated that you just cannot seem to be controlling it. So when the palette is closer, when the box is closer, it's easier to work. So that's why I really like this particular brand. I leave this outside now. So yeah, that's Koi Watercolors. Yeah, this is about 2,500, I think, 2,200, something in the 2,000 range. Yes, it is expensive. I'd suggest you invest in this. There is a smaller box, about for 6 colors. I think there is a smaller box. Do check it out on Amazon. Yeah, I think you can even use this for like a stand like this. So when you're working, it's easy. Sometimes it will sit like this. So I like anything that's cool. So don't mind me. Yeah, the next amazing brand that I'd like to talk about is Windsor and Newton, world famous brand for oils, watercolors, acrylics. Actually, they're more famous for their oil and watercolors. It's quite a big palette actually. I'll just lift the phone a bit. Yeah, it's that big. I'll show it to you with my hand size. It's that big. This is quite expensive. There are 24 colors. I keep the white separately. My white pan is somewhere around here. I keep the white separately. There are 24 colors. This palette specifically comes only with the primary shades. You see greens, you see yellow, red, and blue. So yeah, you can use this as palette. This also comes with a sizable palette like this. So it comes like this. You open, you work, close it back. I use this side also. So this has been with me for at least 5-6 years. Windsor and Newton is like a trusted brand. You can close your eyes and just buy this. But if you're a beginner, I wouldn't suggest you invest in this. You will be initially, when you're learning, you will waste a lot of paint. It's natural because you're trying to learn. You're trying to understand color. So you'd think, oh shit, no, that color is not right. Oh god, oh no, I want another color. So you don't want to waste expensive brands, right? So I wouldn't suggest for a beginner to buy this yet. Once you think you have a hold of watercolors, you can control water and watercolor paint, then go ahead and buy this. Okay, I think we're done with palettes. Any questions? I'm taking questions. Any questions? I'm taking in questions. We just spoke about palettes, watercolor palettes, people newly joining. We just finished watercolor palettes. We will be soon talking about tubes. I'm taking in questions. Any questions? Okay, I think we'll move on to tubes. So when I say tubes, I mean they're slightly more heavy body than palettes. You get a much thicker paint with tubes. I'll show you. That thick. So if you want to layer on to something, you want like a thick layer on one of these. 1 minute. You don't add water when you want to give more precision or anything. So to avoid these brush strokes, you can go. I sort of like it. It gives a more natural finish. So I'm going to take about little water and dip it. Basically, you might want to use tubes. You buy watercolor tubes to use when you want thicker paint. Yes, you have to dilute it a lot if you want runny paints. If you want a runny base like this. I'll show you. So you add more water when you want a wash like this. This is called a wash. Now that's very, I don't know if it's visible properly in the camera. It's very runny. Now you want a thicker this thing. I don't add much water. Like I said, this, you will understand this only as you keep doing it. That's more thicker. The thick paint comes in handy when you want to make, you know, marks like this. It's very easy to do this with oil paints and acrylic paints, but when it comes to watercolors, it's even more easier with gouache. But with watercolors, you have to be gentle. I'm hardly putting any pressure, and yeah, this is why you need tube paints for thicker layering, for thicker paints. It's more heavy body than a watercolor palette, than a watercolor cake. Yeah, so the best brand for this, yeah, I would suggest you pick up Camel Artists Watercolors. This is to layer in, like I said, to layer in heavy body like this, as in to make marks like this, or even if you want thicker paint, you want to give a thick paint of thick wash. By the way, I'm using 300 GSM here. Let me just write that down. This is 300. I'm using 300 GSM paper here because there's no other way I can really explain how all this works. Anyway, we're running out of time. Yeah, so I'd suggest Camel's Artists Watercolors. There are so many other brands out there. There's I will put it up in my stories or in my highlights. I'll suggest a few other brands, but I personally like Camel Artists Watercolor paints. I buy them separately. I never buy a set. I just buy the colors I want, and that's about it. So I think it depends on the pigment and heavy and thickness of the paint. Like each color costs different. It's about one is about 110 rupees, some are 60 rupees, some is 80 rupees, one is 150 rupees. I don't know which is which right now because it's not written here. So I buy them separately. I never buy a box set. I never buy like a set of 12 colors, 24 colors. I never buy them. I buy them separately. It's just less cost effective, and I don't buy every damn color. I like to create them. So that's that. The next brand that I would suggest, this is more for beginners, but I still like it. I still use it. It's Faber Castell's Artist Watercolors. They're more runny in nature, not as thick as Camel. They're slightly more runny. That's why you see. I like this particular green from Faber Castell. It's beautiful. But then again, like I said, it's quite runny and but slightly more thicker than the palette. So this is another brand. Yeah, that's about it for watercolor paints, and there are so many other brands. And again, like I said, I will list them in my highlights, my stories. Look for them. Okay, so let's go to gouache paints. Before that, any questions regarding watercolors? All those watching, any questions? We spoke about watercolor palettes. We spoke about tubes. There are separate watercolor cubes available. There's so many different kinds of stuff. You have to start and explore them yourself. This is almost dry. Needs to dry more. Any questions? No questions? Okay, seems like we have some very smart people watching. Okay, we'll save some questions for the last. Let's start talking about gouache. Now, I have only 2 brands of gouache that I use right now. Let's start with Dollar Rowney. I don't know if it's called Dollar Rowney or Taylor Rowney. I don't know. It's a UK brand, I think. Or US. I have no idea. So this is a very good brand of gouache. I actually was very hesitant to use. I'm not quite a fan of Taylor Rowney. Their oil colors weren't that great, so I wasn't very happy. But then I thought I'll try their gouache. My supplier suggested, he's like, it is very nice, madam, please try. So I said, okay, let's give it a try, and I like it. I actually do like it, but they are a little runny, meaning that they don't come out as thick. So let me show it to you. It's quite runny. Now I had a question in the beginning where someone asked, what is the difference between watercolors and gouache? Gouache, I'd suggest don't use much water. I just dipped my brush into this thing. So let's move the paper a bit. Okay. Gouache is more thick. I hope y'all can see that. Gouache is more thick. You see that? Why do people use gouache? I'll show you. I can layer really thick. It's really opaque. You can layer it on the watercolors and it won't pick up the watercolor unless you've added more water. This is dry almost, so I'll show you how gouache works on this. You see the opaqueness? It's quite pigmented. You see that? This is watercolors here. I've put gouache on watercolors. It won't pick up unless I add more water to this. Gouache is like a water-based cousin of oils and acrylic. So gouache is amazing to do some amazing landscapes, sceneries. I have some pieces here that I thought I'll show you and try and explain how gouache works and how watercolors work. Just a minute. Those joining in new, hi. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite pieces that I created recently. It's almost 6 o'clock. Yeah, so this wash that I've given here, this very thin layer, this is watercolors. Now for me to get the thickness, I can't get that with watercolors. I mean, I might have to layer a lot of paint to make it look as thick. At least about 4 layers, but I don't need to do that with gouache. It's just all this you see here, this opaque white, this opaque white here, this opaque brown here. All of this is gouache. Gouache gives a very very oil feeling, very you know, yeah, opaque basically. Like these trees here, it's a watercolor base. Then I went in with gouache on top of it. I'll just show it to you. So this is this I've already explained about watercolors here. So I'm going to use gouache on this to show how gouache works. So I'm not adding much water, just little bit so that it doesn't stick much. So let's say you're doing a mountain. You see how thick it's layering? That won't happen much with watercolors unless you use it straight out of the tube, or you don't use water at all, which is not possible because it needs to be at least that runny. Yeah. I love gouache for this. I can just keep layering paint, but yeah, of course, after a fourth or fifth layer, and then the paper won't take any of the paint. Oh God, my mouth is stuttering. Yes, that's gouache. Anyway, let's talk about the gouache that I use in the brands. Like I said, I use Dollar Rowney. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong. It's Taylor Rowney or Dollar Rowney. I don't know how to say it. Dollar Rowney gouache. This is aqua soluble, aquafine, which means it's water soluble. Yes, there are other kinds of gouache like acrylic gouache. I don't use them. I don't have them. If and when I start using, I'll do a review. Then another brand that I use is again my favorite, Windsor Newton Designers Gouache. These are amazing. The pigment is amazing. The consistency is amazing. It's just really look at the thickness. So Windsor Newton, again, I would suggest if you are a beginner with gouache, I'd suggest you use Dollar Rowney or Brustro. There are so many other gouache brands you can try out, but go with the cost-effective ones in the beginning when you're learning. But I would really suggest Dollar Rowney. It's really good. I've done some really big pieces of mine with Dollar Rowney. So this is. Is it visible? I hope it's visible. I don't know what happened suddenly. Okay. This is Windsor Newton gouache. Just look at that opaqueness. This is gouache red. Let me show you watercolors red. That's watercolors, that's gouache. You get the difference? It's like a, I'm not body shaming or anything, it's like the fat cousin of watercolors. I like both. I like layering gouache on watercolors when I want really thick surfaces, or when I want some very thick characters. So that's gouache. Let me repeat the brands I use. I use Windsor Newton Designers Gouache and Dollar Rowney Simply Aquafine Gouache. Yeah, these are the two gouache brands that I use. Anyway, any more questions about paint before we move on to materials? I'm taking in questions. We have half an hour left. I will be moving on to paper and materials. Let me know. This is gouache. This is watercolors. You see the difference? I'm taking in questions. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to materials. Let's talk about paper. Okay, so the best quality paper for watercolors is 300 GSM. I'm going to be really honest. I even practiced on 300 GSM. I didn't want to practice on a low quality because I feel like you will understand the quality of water, the quality of paint better on a best quality paper. So what I did was I bought 300 GSM paper, but I bought a more cost-effective brand. This is 300 GSM. You see the thickness? I hope that's focusing. Yeah, that's 300 GSM. This is 200 GSM. You see how it bends? That shows the thickness of the paper. 300 GSM is not so easy to bend. And then there's 250 GSM. I use 250 GSM for my color pencils. You can't use 300 GSM for color pencils. I mean, you can, but the problem is it's too toothy and there's no space for me to pack in the color pencil pigment. So the best paper is 300 GSM. You can use 250 and 200 to practice, you can, but to be very honest, you will not understand the flow of watercolors and gouache unless you practice on 300 GSM or at least 250 GSM. You can practice on 150 and 200 GSM, but then again the paper will start tearing quickly. It will start unless you've I hope that's focusing. Unless you've stuck two sheets of 200 GSM together and then you're working, that works. But then again, it's too much work. So that's paper. Let's talk about brushes. So the best brushes for watercolors, and I think, is synthetic brushes, synthetic bristles, and the brand that I have been using for years together, and it's the one brand I trust, and this brush is at least 10, 11, 12 years old. I maintain my brushes by the way, so that's why it still looks this good. By the way, do not throw a spoilt brush at all. So yeah, this is Pidilite Fine Art synthetic brushes. You get them in round and flat. This is round. They have up till sizes 12. Then there's so yeah, this is the trusted brand. This is the brand I use for both watercolors and gouache. There are a few other brands too, some expensive ones. This is Weldon's mop brush, really good actually. I use them for oils too. I use them for watercolors when I want huge blobs of paint, or I want to cover a large surface. It's a mop brush. I use it more often for acrylics actually, to blend. That's why it's called a mop brush. Weldon's mop brush. You can write that down. Okay, next brush that I use more often. This is actually it's quite big. I'm showing the size. It's that big, yeah. This is again Morrison or Warrison, God knows. Yeah, artist brush. This I think I picked up from Reliance Art Mart. I did a lot of my galaxy paintings with this because of the shape, because I get like a cloud shape like this. Yeah, I'll show you. There, when you want that shape. So for that, this brush. Also it helps if the if the stick is long, because if you want to stand afar and trying to understand the painting, sometimes I can't stand very close to the painting and paint because I need to understand what I'm actually doing. That's one brand. And then there is Sugam. This is quite famous actually. I haven't seen many people use it around here in India. Of course, I've seen men use it. I don't know about the women. I've seen a lot of male artists use them, and I use them for when I want to give when I'm working on big sheets and I want to give a big wash. Yeah, Sugam. This is a 50 mm size brush. I have a few other sizes. This is a 75 mm. I use them for acrylic too when I want to give my washes. I use them for oil too when I'm giving a base layer of before I start. I also have, this is a 100 mm. It's written here. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful brush. I maintain it so well, that's why it still looks like this. Otherwise, my beautiful bristles will be in some other color. Okay, so these are brushes. You can use all these brushes that I showed right now are, synthetic brushes. So, and then you can use pony hair. There's pony hair, there is hog hair, and then there is squirrel hair. I think I have one pony hair brush. I don't use them much. I feel like I can't control with a pony hair. I don't like it much, and I feel like it leaves too much blobs around everywhere, so I don't like using them much. And there is squirrel hair brushes. Just a reminder, squirrel hair brushes are banned in India. They don't sell them anymore. Mine are at least 10 years old. So don't report me. I'm a lawyer. Anyway, this is from Sugam. They don't manufacture squirrel hair in India anymore. They don't even import them. They don't even export them. But these are amazing, amazing, amazing for watercolors. Really good. But I use them only for washes. For thick paint, thick wash, I don't use squirrel hair. I need a more thicker bristle one, so I use synthetic brushes. Okay, that was brushes. Yes, let's talk about pencils to draw. Now you can, I would suggest a normal HB pencil. I specifically like Staedtler because they come with this eraser at the back, and it just erases very easily, and it doesn't leave any residue there. And but very rarely do I actually use a pencil as background. I use it only when I do gouache. Watercolors, what I do is I use watercolor pencils to draw. That way, you know, and I rarely draw the whole picture. What I do is I just make marks like this to know where is what, to understand the foreground, background, and the, you know, middle ground. But otherwise I just my brush is enough for me to draw. So that's pencils. Any more questions? Any questions you guys have? Please ask. Oh yeah, I've actually written down the brands that y'all can pick up. That's Camel, not Camel. Faber, Castell, Windsor and Newton. Any questions? Any questions, guys? We have 10 more minutes and then the video is done. Any more questions? We'll wait for 10 more minutes. I'm here for questions. Oh yeah, someone asked me about palettes. You can just leave paint on like this. Don't even wash them. You can reactivate these watercolors. They can leave them for years and it'll still be good. Even gouache. I prefer a ceramic plate. I just leave them like this. Any questions? We have 10 more minutes. By the way, this video will be available, so you can come back and refer whenever you want. Leave any questions until I do my next live. Any questions, guys? I think the session in the morning that had a lot of they had a lot of questions. They asked a lot of questions. I answered quite a lot of them, and then that was it. How long do I get more often? I get the you know, I get questions like how long does it take to actually learn watercolors? Honestly, it's how much you practice. Some people pick it up in a week, some in 2 days, some take a year, some take a few months. It's all on how much you practice. Where to buy? There's I'll put up a highlight. Put it up in my stories, in my highlights, where you can pick up. There's one Reliance Art Mart in Commercial Street. You can buy them from online. Then there's Amazon. Make sure it's fulfilled by Amazon, the delivery. Then there is Bhaskarat Center in Bangalore. Then that's, I think, Chitrakala Parishad, and there's one in Avenue Road. Then there's Sapna Book House, but Sapna doesn't sell Windsor Newton and high-end professional stuff. Yeah, beginner art materials they do sell. Sapna Book House does sell. And then there's MK Stationers in Jayanagar. I'll put up addresses and location and everything of where to buy the materials as a highlight or in my stories. I'll store them, don't worry. Anything more about paper, gouache, watercolors, brushes, pencils? Okay, I think we're done for today, and the next live we'll do soon. We'll discuss acrylic paints, we'll discuss oil paints, we'll discuss solvents, what to mix with them, how to use them. I'll put up quick videos, tutorials on YouTube. Do check out my channel, by the way, and when you check out, please subscribe, like, share and comment. How do you clean the brushes? Just with water or any other solution? I do clean with water. When you're working, you have two cups, one clean water, one the water with this thing. You clean the brushes. But once they get really dirty and they need a cleanup, I say dish soap. I'm not even kidding. Get Vim is best. It's more soft. Vim liquid, I'd suggest, not the bar soap. Vim liquid, amazing to clean. Cleans all that paint right out. There's no other solution. Since they are watercolors and gouache paints, water is the best. And if paint is still not coming out, you want it squeaky clean, you can use Vim. Just a little bit. Just a dollop. That's enough. Like, this is a really highly used brush of mine. It went from this color to this color. So I use a lot of... I keep each brush for different colors. So some colors, especially green, blue, they leave stains. So no matter how much you wash them, this is actually a very clean brush. No matter how much you wash them, they will still leave stains. So yeah, if you really want it squeaky clean, I'd suggest Vim liquid is best. I find it more what do you say, more soft on the brushes. Yeah. Any more questions? 5 more minutes, guys. People joining in late, very late. This video will be available later, so don't worry. Go back there and refer the whole thing. Any more questions, guys? Oh, I wanted to show, this is actually a spoilt brush. The bristles are actually quite damaged, but don't ever throw a damaged brush. You can keep them to create impressions, to create marks on your canvas, on the paper. Keep them, don't throw them, you can use them. I'll do another video on creating impressions and everything. Just never throw a damaged brush. You can still use it. So that's it, I guess. Thank you for joining in. There were quite a few people, and thank you so much. And please follow, comment, share my YouTube channel. Link is in the bio. Please subscribe, like, share and comment. Please comment. That YouTube assumes that you like the video and they push the video more. Yeah, that's it, I guess. And thank you for joining.